All right. We are live on X, and I believe we are now live on YouTube as well. What is going on, everybody? Hope you're having a phenomenal end to the weekend. Just wanted to come on live. I saw Mitt was leaving a little bit early. He's going to Boston, so I figured working from home today, take the opportunity to hang out with y'all. Sorry I'm not all dolled up and prepared for any specific materials, but I figured, hey, what the hell? Might as well come on and say hello to everybody, see how everybody's doing, see how everyone's performing in La Markets. I don't really have an agenda. I know that some people are keeping an eye out 23 minutes from now. Russell 1000 additions. We got Hot Tanner in here. We got Hot Fool's Gold in here, the myth, the legend. So with that, Russell 1000, some people think HIMS, some people are thinking Rocket Lab, some people thinking ASTS. Honestly, I haven't done any due diligence with respect to understanding what companies are even up for it. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. We can play along with it. I don't know about you guys. I'd love to hear your guys' thought in the chat. My X has not been giving me notifications. So one of two things, I've either become massively unpopular in the last 5 hours, which is possible, or for some reason my notifications just aren't working right now on X. So big question is, do we make Russell 1000? What is we, right? It's a good question. Okay, X is broken for a lot of people. Okay, I thought somebody finally turned me in for being a fraud, which still waiting for the day. But I am one. So it is what it is. Emergency press conference. I'm an idiot. That's the emergency press conference news. But really just here to hang out with y'all, man. I mean, we can talk about different stocks. Yeah, I got shadow banned. We can talk about different stocks, talk about my portfolio. We can talk about pretty much anything. But no real news other than I took an opportunity to babysit the folks that are coming in, knowing that Amit was going to Boston. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully we'll get some people trickling in here. In the meantime, one of the things I always wanted to do. Did my Rocket Lab just fill? I sold some covered calls, so I'll start off with this. In retrospect, some people might call me an idiot, depending on what happens with the Russell 1000 news. But I'm curious if I accidentally double bought. It's not a lot of shares, but it'd be enough where it'd be like, I'd rather not pull that out of my checking, you know? But I sold some covered calls on Rocket Lab for $27, expiring today, right? So obviously when I sold them, we were hovering around the $25 mark. I got 2 cents for them. So if you got a couple thousand shares like your boy Mateus, it can add up a little bit. So let me just double check that I didn't just double buy. I hate this new. I'm not a fan of this new Fidelity. The way they set up this new Fidelity app. I'm not a fan of it. I really have to get used to it. So that's canceled. This was my covered call. Open. Do I have anything open? My Google contracts, my buy to close, buy to close, buy to close, set open, and then buy 10 shares. Okay, that's just 10 shares, you know. I just don't want to be buying 20 shares, you know. I'm surprised I didn't execute earlier though. Anyway. Let's just see. Let's see how everybody's doing. Russell 1000, go Rocket Lab. We got Gurjab. We got Jackie, Deltsy, Tom, Hot Fool's Gold, Hot Tanner, Hot Megatron, RT1, Sponge Rob. Let's see. Who else? We got BD Zocold. Let's see. How many shares of Rocket Lab do I have? Enough where it matters. That's all I can really say. I don't really share publicly anymore what my portfolio is like. I kind of got, I mean, I'll just be blunt with you guys. I kind of got to $1 million and I was like, you know what? People don't believe I have $1 million in my investment accounts anyway. So why share? So believe it or not, that was a couple years back, actually close to 3 years ago. We've had pretty good markets since then. So yeah, it doesn't matter. North of 7 figures is the whole portfolio. So maybe when I get to what is that, 8 figures, I'll disclose again. But noticed ABCL in the public portfolio. Yeah, we've had that one in there for a while. Not been performing well. And actually, I think if I moved to Canada, I'd be a quadrillionaire because what $5 US is like $1 million there. So yeah, with respect to ABCL, that was a Chris buy. I'm okay with it as well. I'm not trying to put that all on Chris. Chris kind of introduced me to the company. It's a company that was actually pretty big in creating some COVID vaccines. So they got a decent amount of revenue specifically from that. But since then, they haven't really had many out of the park winners post COVID vaccine. And so they've kind of just been dwindling, but they have a pretty good team of people. And the hope is that they find one or two drugs. And once they find one or two drugs, it's off to the races. So there's that. When margaritas, man. Yeah, I was trying to get to Mexico this weekend. For some reason, just couldn't find the time that I wanted, the hotel that I wanted. But I wasn't going to go to Mexico City. I was probably more so going to go to Cancun, Cabo, or something like that. Yeah, so they don't have enough ability to manufacture massive amounts, but they do a lot of research. So what ends up happening is ABCL will license out, right? And so they'll kind of become partners. Granted, I think they're trying to get a little bit more. So I think they're trying to, like I said, I'm not that educated on it, but I think they have like a couple $100 million of research, good people on staff, and they're really just trying to get a good couple drugs in the pipeline. I mean, might as well just take a look. It's been a couple quarters, honestly, since I've looked at AbCellera. And I know that they had a few things that were hopefully in the pipeline for them. By no means am I saying this is a great opportunity. It's actually very risky. So it goes into trying to understand risk tolerance, and I try to make that public with anything that I talk about on the channel. But since you asked, right, this isn't something I don't have this in my personal portfolio, right? This is just strictly the public portfolio, and it's a high risk, potentially high reward opportunity, right? As you've seen, we're already down 50% on the position, but let's just see. So these are the people that they've kind of partnered with, right? And they have been partnering with and partnered over the past, say, decade or so. But they're trying to build a few different drugs, and these are the ones that are actually in phase 1. So what ends up happening, I've learned actually a little bit about this through this week, is phase 1 is easy in terms of being, it doesn't cost too much money. Where it really starts to get pretty expensive is when you get into human trials. And so really, I think what they're trying to do is be the research engine for a lot of different companies. And then once they basically find an opportunity, then they'll partner with a larger drug manufacturing company that has the ability and kind of take it to human trials. So we'll kind of see. Like I stated, 810 million in cash, and let's just see. First 2 clinical trials for ABCL 635, 575. I mean, some of the stuff works, but this is one of those things where it's like it could work, it might not work, it might never work. Let's see. So this drug, first-in-class antibody for non-hormonal treatment for hot flashes, menopause. So that'd be good. I have a lot of great women in my life, sisters, mothers, and they tell me Hot flashes are no joke, no bueno, as you kind of get into your late 30s, early 40s, and sometimes you might have to wait till your 50s. So yeah, hopefully that one works out. That'd be great to be able to help people. So that's 635. Where's 575? This talks a lot about it. It's interesting. Let's see what 575 is. Best in class antibody for atopic dermatitis. What's that? Hopefully it's dandruff. I have bad dandruff, so hopefully it's dandruff. Let's see. Favorable safety profile as what is that? High potential across multiple inflammation indications, celiac, alopecia. Okay, so it's a lot of different things. These are some pretty good graphics. Anyway, so that's that. Should I ban this gentleman? I don't know who you're talking about. John. Yeah, I don't know. What's he saying? Let's see. We got Miss Tesla in here. We got Miss Julie. Hey, how are you guys? That's cool. Babysitting Kai from the Stream University. No. Sounds like this guy's a pretty much lover of. I don't have any of those lovers. I'm a single guy till I die. You know. Single guy till I die. What's up, Mike? How are things, brother? Yeah, you can ban that guy. I don't know. The guy loves Kai Senate or whatever his name is. Go watch his stream. That's fine. Yeah, he's a big streamer. He does a good job, from what I understand. I don't follow him. I don't watch him much. All the best to him. But what are you guys thinking? What other things in the market? Hopefully, you guys were able to catch Cash Flow Chronicles last night. Chris and I pretty much he was talking about ASTS, AST Space Mobile. Some may call it how they're going to potentially start actually generating a decent amount of revenue potentially towards the end of this year. So fingers crossed associated with the people that are invested in that, and good luck to that. I am waiting to see potentially what happens with that. I'm not against ASTS. It's just I don't want to invest in any no revenue companies at the moment. You know, I already have a few, so I'm not looking to potentially buy any more at this point in time. What is this whole Russell 1000 deal? Possible inclusion in the index? Yeah, so if you can get included to the Russell 1000, it just means more ETFs will be able to be building into buying into basically the stock. Yeah, exactly. ETFs load up. I don't know much about Nebius. I mean, I appreciate that everybody and their mother is talking about it, buying into it. That often makes me skeptical of looking into companies like that when for some reason magically everybody in a week turns into this massive bull on a single company. HIMS isn't like that. Like HIMS, I saw Chris from Data Driven Investing and many others talk about HIMS a long time ago, and and that slowly crept in. So that one's a little bit different. So I wouldn't put that in the same category as Nebius. I don't know. So anyway, the thing that bothers me is a lot of times when I see people jump right into something like that, it doesn't end well. So I could be very wrong, right? So please do your due diligence, but I completely honest, I have done zero due diligence on it. So other than I know that, you have some prolific, might have been like NVIDIA that invested a little bit of money because they're using Blackwell chips and their data centers, etc. So, yeah, it just doesn't seem like they have that big of a moat in that respect. You and Steve should do a Pokemon card stream. Would love to see what you guys like. I just buy anything that makes money, man. I'm not here to I don't know if you're asking what Pokemon I like most. I mean, I'm a 151 guy. I couldn't tell you what any of the Beyond original 151 are. So, yeah, I know. Hopefully, you're not I hopefully don't come off as not that not that I would care, but I hopefully don't come off as the guy that's buying it because I like the Pokemon per se. I buy it because it's going to make me money, and I think it's cool. So, but I do like seeing like some of the old school Pokemon get like a refresh, like the Pikachu's and um, yeah, all that. I get too bullish on VG when I watch you and Chris. I love it. VG, man. I mean, it's nothing. We're not talking about putting men on the moon, but we are talking about powering homes. And, the United States has a lot of natural gas. So a lot of it to share, especially with our friends in Europe and Southeast Asia. So I'm very bullish on it. I'm very happy. I wasn't excited buying it at IPO at $24. And obviously it's down, over 50% since then. It had dropped even more than that, 65, 70%. But honestly, it's a gift from God. Like, I don't really, I wasn't very happy buying it at $40 or $40 IPO. Sorry, $24 IPO price, $40 billion market cap valuation. I was not happy buying it there. And with that, we had the opportunity to buy it at a 60, 70% discount. And I think I'd say it really just depends on what you're looking for, right? The easy money in terms of if you're trading it has been made. We went from $7 literally to, let's just take a quick look. I mean, the chart doesn't look good, right? It's only been public since January. And like I said, you can cherry pick. Like I'm cherry picking this graph right now. And if you'd started buying in a month ago, you'd be up, 25%. But if you're looking 3 months, you're still down, right? So, but I mean, during this whole tariff issue, we were down at $7 flat. I think even intraday, we were I saw some people, I think, picking up in the high 690s. So in that respect, I mean, if you were picking it up at $7, what is that? I'm not good with math, guys, so give me a break. You're up 62% if you cherry pick the bottom. On break even on a lot of these shares. This is some of the shares that I've been buying. This is like a small position, but I have it in 2 other accounts as well. 2 other? 1 other? 1 other account. I have this in another account. That's where the majority of it is. I thought for some reason I had in 2 other accounts. No, Rocket Lab's the only one I have in 2 other accounts. I have Rocket Lab on Robinhood too. But the ones that I'm mostly concentrating on and adding to, I just add a little bit of, a couple $100 here and there for these. And that's where these small positions kind of get started up. So, I mean, it's a blessing, I think, for a lot of people to potentially get here. I think it's what is it? $25 billion? Let me see. Yeah, $27 billion company right now. It'll 4x, 5x from here, just based off market cap alone. I think it will be over $100 billion company. If you want to know more, I speak very eloquently about it. Very good elevator pitch. You could really simplify it in, I might as well do it. You guys are sitting here. So the United States has now become the leader in LNG exports globally, right? We're at about 110 MTPA. Within the next 10 to 15 years, basically by 2040, I anticipate the export capacity of the United States to grow by about 150 to 200 MTPA. Venture Global has current projects that have the anticipation to export about 38 to MTPA installed today. And within the next 2 years, we'll be on the path to exporting as much as Cheniere Energy, which is about 60 MTPA. So you'll have Venture Global exporting about 60 MTPA in the next 2 years, which very quick ramp up, basically from 2022 to now of 60 MTPA, very, very fast. And not only that, but there's additional expansion projects and two additional greenfield projects that they are working on that will get total capacity for Venture Global up to over 160 MTPA. And those are the projects we know about. So if you take that into account and you say that, generally speaking, one MTPA generates you about $750 million to $1 billion in market cap, generally, then you can kind of just say, well, 150 MTPA times 0.75, it's a $110 billion market cap company. Now there's going to potentially be buybacks. There's going to be a lot of other things. So even if you don't believe that, okay, fine, don't believe that. Even if you say Venture Global, I don't want to care about the MTPA piece. I don't want to care about, your thoughts about it's going to be 750 million to $1 billion of market cap per MTPA export capacity. Fine. What I can tell you is, if we were talking about 300 MTPA of export capacity by the end of 2035, 2040 timeframe, then that means you're going to be buying a company that owns about 45 to 55%, around, let's just say, simplify, 50% of the total export capacity of the United States. And the United States will be the largest and continue to be the largest, is the largest and will continue to be the largest exporter of LNG. And it is, at the moment, the second largest exporter of the United States, and I think will eventually be the first largest, maybe other than services. Which it would probably be second to services for sure. I'm thinking things like Google and stuff like that. So there's that. And then if you add in next decade being in a different position, they currently don't export anything, but within 2 years' time, 3 years' time, we'll hopefully start seeing some export capacity from them. But the hope is that eventually, and I'll have to word this very carefully, and so if you actually are interested, please write down some keywords to this. The Rio Grande LNG project will be about 40 MTPA of export capacity. So it's about 13% of the future export capacity of the United States, of which they'll own, what is that? Let me see. They'll own about 2/3 of that. Next decade will. So you're pretty much investing in a company that will own 50% of the export capacity plus another, 8-9%. So you're putting yourself in a position to own equity stake in, I'll just say, 55 to 65% of the market share of the United States export capacity. So very lucrative opportunity just by investing in two independent companies. Unfortunately, there's no other companies right now that I think you can single out. You can invest in something like Woodside. You can invest in other things that have LNG exposure, but none of them will be pure play LNG like Next Decade and Venture Global. And then if you really want to dive deeper where the real opportunity is now, in my opinion, if you look at Next Decade, that's a good opportunity, but risk, right? The risk of dilution, risk of risk of dilution, risk, obviously the projects get delayed. They haven't even FID train number 4. And not only have they not FID train number 4, but trains 1 through 3 still are online. And trains 1 through 3 aren't the most lucrative in terms of equity ownership for them. You only own 20% of trains 1 through 3. So, in that respect, within the next 5 years, they're not looking like a lot of cash flow from Next Decade. But if you look 2035, after they get trains 4, trains 5, hopefully start on train 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 and 10. Then, the last two sentences very speculative. but 3 sentences and before, all true, right? So they, look at the public statements by next decade, what and how many trains they have publicly announced. But do you get there, right? And that's kind of always the thought. So you are paying $2 billion market cap. What will it grow to? Could it be 20 billion? Could it be 25 billion in terms of market cap? And even if it does grow to that, how much dilution are you going to go through for that? So just some food for thought there. Sorry, I got a little tagged up there. Hopefully, I'm not too far behind. Did we speak about ABCL? Yes, we did. So cold. I love that. Gotta be satisfied with everything that you do. Stocks are the least risky asset by now. Given the quake shaking the bond market, I worry real estate can be vulnerable in an imminent recession. Valuations will drop. I would love that. Wouldn't necessarily hate buying a few more properties. That would be great. What did I miss from Gurjat? Oh. Any thoughts on nuclear energy and how oil and LNG may be affected, not affected? Unless there's a large breakthrough in SMR, small modular reactors, it's going to be tough to really impact the oil and LNG market right now. Now I know that the United States has, started to warm up a little bit about nuclear. I know Canada as well, but if you were to sanction any new nuclear at the moment, any nuclear facilities, it would be at a minimum 10 years out. But that being said, if you do have a step change in SMRs, that could have a different change. But they've been talking about SMRs since the 80s, like it's not like SMRs are a new thing. There's a lot of companies out there right now, and I know a lot of you guys in the chat have actually done well investing in some of these SMR companies. But as far as I'm aware, none of them have done it successfully. But fingers crossed, maybe they will. And to be honest, it's a little bit tough at the moment to assume that that's going to happen. Got a lot of smart people trying to invest in SMRs for quite some time. Not a whole lot to report for at least 2 years. Clinical 1 trials started for the hot flash drug. Yeah, so we'll see what happens with ABCL, but I don't know much about it. When all in on Google, it's too cheap. Hey, man, I think it's pretty interesting. A lot of people hate on Google. I think Google's a great opportunity. You're seeing a lot of people start to warm up to it. Ackman now owns shares in Google and Amazon. Those are the Magnificent Seven that I hold as well. Disclosure, though, I sold some puts in NVIDIA to 120 or something. So we'll see. Fingers crossed that the earnings report for that comes out well. So we'll see. To the Russell 1000 thing come out yet? Let me see. I appreciate I'm behind a bit by about index entry. Let's do tools past 24 hours. I don't see anything. Yeah, I don't see anything, guys. If you guys see something, let me know. Used to buy graded Pokemon from GameStop, and everything went up so much. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to get your fingers on it. I'm assuming this is about VG. $8.39. We're now actively selling puts on it to lower your cost basis. We got Junebug. We got Kevin. Hope we got some trade deals, Daddy. T needs to deliver us some gains. I like that. That's funny. But chipping away on VG, very small, but like it, we'll keep buying. It's one of those things where it's like you're not looking for big frills. You're not looking for. Sorry, let me stop sharing. Yeah, you're not looking for 20x returns or anything like that. But yeah, I think that's another thing is like you have to recognize it's going to take time. It's not going to be one of those things that shows up overnight, and the hype is going to be tough to kind of compete with. I know a lot of people are like, when's VG going to move? It's like, well, I don't know what you're expecting. It already went from $7 to 11, but I get it. It's down. Some people have been buying in since the IPO, so I hear you. One of my buddies, I told him, I was like, dude, don't be buying into this company unless you're planning on adding very consistently. And, this is one of my buddies that I try to convince to just invest in the S&P because he goes through peaks and troughs where he's like, oh, every couple of weeks he'll be buying pretty religiously. And I'm, very proud of him when he does that. But then unfortunately, other times he's just like, I don't have the money right now. And for some reason, it's always just when stocks are going down. He's always like, I don't have the money right now. But when stocks are going up, he's all about hype. And well, I shouldn't say he's all about hype, but it just seems likely that when stocks are going up, he magically has money to put into the markets. So, yeah, VG might take a while. Hot Roy, the myth, the legend. The debt, not good, man. I mean, you have to think it takes a lot of money to invest in these facilities. But in terms of where it's at, in terms of where EBITDA will be for this type of company that's just getting started, like I said, they just started producing 3 years ago. The debt is much more manageable. Had you looked at it, kind of before this year, fiscal year 24, you'd be like, oh, it's not that great, right? Debt to EBITDA is pretty high. But you have to think, like, it's like with anything. Like, if you start at a small base of profit and you take on something before the projects get fully online, it's always going to look poor. But the debt to EBITDA has shrunk massively or will shrink massively in fiscal year 25, just based off the fact that EBITDA will grow from, I think it was like 2 billion, 3 billion in fiscal year 24. Let me see. Yeah, it was 2 billion. This is a prime example, right? EBITDA for Venture Global was $2 billion in fiscal year 24, right? There's over $20 billion worth of debt. So that's a debt to EBITDA of over 10. Doesn't look good. But if you start thinking that the EBITDA for this year, fiscal year 25, will be $6.5 to $7 billion. Well, that just halved, or not halved, chopped your debt to EBITDA in 3, right? Because you're pretty much tripling the amount of EBITDA that you have. So now they're starting to generate enough where they can actually pay a decent amount down every single month or quarter and start focusing on really how to manage cash. And not only that, but imagine in about a year's time when they actually get the third facility online and that starts kicking out money too, right? You have to think they're already pre-investing in the third facility. So you start to think now, you're like, oh, not only do they have 2 facilities online, but they're about to have a third. They just got the second one started literally in December. So you think 12 months from now, they're going to have the third facility online, then they're going to have enough EBITDA to start really chopping away at that debt. And they've already done a decent job. I don't need to tell you guys too much. I could go on a tangent for hours, as I've been known to do. But basically, in 2022, they were selling into the high gas prices, and they were selling it at spot price. And so, with that, they've already paid down like $12 billion worth of debt. So, these projects are pretty intense. They're about $1 billion per MTPA to install. So, if you think about it, the total amount of capital probably needed to get these venture global facilities all the way up is north of $100 billion. So you have to think, you have to make in terms of EBITDA and actual earnings north of $100 billion to pay off all that. So it's going to take some time, and the facilities just kind of came online. So you have to think that these facilities will last 25, 30 years. So it takes a good amount of money, but in the long term, it'll paint itself off. Yes, it will. Deep in getting anyone to write covered calls, though my holdings are in tax-free account, which cannot write options. That's yeah, don't know how to answer that, my guy. Next decade is a fitting name, yes. Yes, it is. Yes, Friday live stream just for you, Melanie. Do you think Tesla or Rocket Lab return more this year? I don't know. UK, what's going on, my guy? Don't do anything I wouldn't do. You have Devon, BP, Next, and GEV. What's GEV? Am I dense? Oh, GE Vernova. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird that you wouldn't be able to sell options at a tax advantage account. You might just have to apply to your broker. So I know Fidelity, the initial thought as well, you have to look for level 1 options specifically for covered calls. You have to apply for that. At least with Fidelity, you did. I'm even more bullish on Rocket Lab after you gave Chris a breakdown on it yesterday. I do see a world where both companies succeed, though. Hey, I mean, ASTS, I think, is onto something. The thing that like I stated, I have a lot of money in next decade, and that's pre-revenue. I don't want to take on another pre-revenue company right now. The thing that's challenging about ASTS is, and why I didn't initially throw a lot of money into Rocket Lab either, was because I didn't know the future of it. And I added money once I became more comfortable with the revenue generation that Rocket Lab was getting. And once I realized that they were the real deal, I think I started investing in Rocket Lab. Actually, I have the data. Let's not lie here, or speculate, because my memory can be off. So let's see the launch cadence here. I started investing around 2021 May timeframe, I believe. Okay, so I started investing. I was going to say 17 launches is when I first started knowing that I'd be investing in Rocket Lab. So that was late 2020, early 2021 timeframe, and that's kind of when I started following them. But at the time, they weren't generating the most prolific amount of profit. So actually, let me pull that up while I'm, just talking about it. I mean, 2021, they made $14 million total profit for the year. So, that's from their QPF. Sorry, not QPF. The SPAC investment presentation, I think, or maybe that was my forecast. I don't know, but they made like what $20 million or $24 million in all of 2021. Actually, it was way more than that. Sorry, let me see. Let me scroll down. It keeps spitting out nonsense. Revenue $50 million. So they made $50 million in revenue in all of 2021, and they've come a far way. These are the real revenues, and now you're seeing they're generating over $120 million a quarter. So, and next quarter they're hoping to break $140 million. So the company, I mean, this is where I really started to start adding heavy, was in this 2022 timeframe, early 2023 timeframe, because I saw what was going on. I saw the things that they were doing, the capabilities that they were unlocking. The launch cadence was getting better. Um, and you can see like this is 2 launches in a quarter. This is 2 launches in a quarter, 1 launch in a quarter. Now we're getting to the place where we're at 6, 7 launches. Sorry, 5, 6 launches in a quarter. So we're doing rather well. So, um, and this is an estimate for 2Q. Sorry, so take that with a grain of salt. So and you can see like this was 5 launches, 6 launches in the quarter. So I think 5 launches and made $35.5 million, but we had $87 million worth of satellites. So I mean, I didn't really start diving deep into actually adding a crap ton of shares until I felt a little bit more comfortable and I consolidated positions. I had it goes back to Tesla says this a lot. Tesla says this a lot is when you're kind of exploring, you kind of have to put money everywhere and then continue to kind of investigate. Maybe it wasn't Tess, but it was somebody else. But I think it was Tess. So correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, Tess. But when you're exploring, you kind of just have to put money in there, right, to get yourself invested in terms of continuing to do due diligence and put your in like can like then ensure that you're going to be looking after your investment. And as you see different players doing well or making strides in a better direction, you consolidate, in my opinion, to the ones that you think are going to be the top winners. And so that's what I did with Rocket Lab. Okay, that was Druckenmiller. I think Tess recommended people do that with quantum computing. That's where I'm kind of coming from it with, but I kind of did the same with space to an extent. Like I invested in Virgin Galactic, and I did it with a few others, and it was just like, all right. Once I realized that Virgin Galactic was all marketing and no go, I got out of it, and I had some small positions in like Momentous and things like that that either blew up in my face or I lost 40-50% on, but it was like $1,000, right? And it wasn't really until I started to truly see what Rocket Lab was up to and doing that I was like, I'm going to go in both feet and consolidated out of other things, like sold things like Pepsi, things that I was a little bit more certain about at the time. And I, bought a lot of that stuff in 2020 because of the pullback. And I was like, well, when are you going to buy Pepsi below $90 again? Or what was it, below $100? When are you going to be able to buy JP Morgan below X or, all these other companies? And so I was consolidating the portfolio. And as I was doing that, I was investing in things that I thought would have another leg up. And so that's what I did with Rocket Lab. I don't want to do that with ASTS right now, right? Like it could very well be that it doubles, it actually gets the revenue coming through and they demonstrate the capability. But right now it's only been, yes, AT&T, Verizon have noted that, yes, they're able to kind of see it working and they have the spectrum working and everything like that. But, the revenue still hasn't come through. So until the revenue starts coming through and it makes me more believable, then maybe I'll take a better look at it. But just right now, with where it's at, lack of revenue generation, it's tough for me to put more money into space, unless it was Rocket Lab. So when Rocket Lab takes the next leg up, it's going to be profitable, and that's within the next 12 months. I anticipate you'll start to see a positive EBITDA. You're not going to see break even because I think they're still going to be heavily invested in capital expenditures, etc. But you will see positive EBITDA. We got BD Ray. What's going on, my guy? Yeah, it doesn't have to be Rocket Lab versus ASTS. I think Chris is just having fun because he knows that the ASTS community absolutely hates me. I told people, like, I think ASTS is going to do well. I'm cautiously optimistic. I know a lot of people invested in it. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's pre-revenue because they're starting to get to a place where they have revenue generation. So they're in this transition period of pre-revenue to starting to generate revenue. And I just don't want to be there right now. Right. Like it's the same thing with Palantir. I put in, at the time, $10,000 was a lot of money to me when it IPO'd back in September 2020. And, I continued to invest more and more as I saw fit. And it was easy to invest in Palantir because, and this is a prime example. So let me pull that up. Um, Let me stop sharing for a sec. I don't need everyone seeing all my spreadsheets. So this one was easy to kind of see because, yes, there's net income, but what about gross margins? What about like ops cash or something like that? Damn, okay. But anyway, this you could kind of see this, these two graphics here. So I don't care about net margin. What I do care about is this. So if you look at net margin, right, you'll see that we eventually went positive in the fourth quarter of 2022. And maybe I'll make this bigger and zoom in again. That's too much, maybe. We eventually went positive in net income. It's kind of like this white line here in the fourth quarter of 2022. What you'll see is the cash from operations has been positive for a very long time. So the company was actually generating cash into the business, but on a net income basis, net income meaning that you have to dilute for share-based compensation and all these other things, which shows up in the net income. That's where the negative net income was still coming through, but you were generating cash to the balance sheet. And a prime example of this was this cash on hand. You could see that they weren't hemorrhaging cash like everyone thought they were. Obviously they went from 1.4 billion, and then the IPO, they were able to get a couple billion associated with that, but they weren't hemorrhaging cash like people thought they were. And so that was what I was seeing in Palantir in 2021, 2022. And I was like, damn, I was like, this is the time, because everyone thinks that they're not making any money, and they are going to go bankrupt, and they're not necessarily going to make it. And I'm just sitting here being like, no, they're not losing money, and they're not, they are doing share-based compensation, but that share-based compensation isn't like they're going to the market, right? They already did their ATM when they went direct listed. They're not selling shares on the open market to get cash into the business to keep this cash on hand flat. So it was very easy for me to say, hey, 2021, 2022, like this thing's printing money, or going to start printing money here very soon. And I want to be here when it gets profitable. And so that's when it was a good buy-in for me. And I see the same thing is going to happen with Rocket Lab, when it gets to a place where they stop eating away cash on hand, organically, not inorganically, and they actually generate a positive EBITDA, but they're going to generate a negative net income because of depreciation and things like that. They're going to show up as negative on the income margin. So when you look at the gross margins, they're already at 30%. So gross margin's looking good. If you have an ops margin, so this is where this kind of comes into play, right? Gross margins is this green line up here. You'll have a cash margin, right, which is the actual cash flow coming in and out. This net income is like general allowed accounting practices, where you have to include things like depreciation and things like that. And sometimes this can be used specifically in very capital intensive businesses as basically like a tax buffer. Like you're using it to get a discount on how many taxes you have to buy. It's an incentive to continue to reinvest, right? Real estate, oil and gas, they all very capital intensive. And so you get that depreciation bit that helps lower kind of your net income. And so you have to pay slightly less taxes. It's a tax benefit in a way. So what I'm looking for Rocket Lab, which I need to start tracking a little bit better, is what's this cash from ops looking like? And once this becomes positive, I think the company is going to go in extremely wildly good direction, because I won't think it's very far after, considering Rocket Lab doesn't do as much share dilution as Palantir, that net income will eventually be positive. So I don't know when the company is anticipated to be net positive. in terms of net income. They, I had to go back and listen to what Adam says. I always anticipated when they talked about being kind of EBITDA even, it was EBITDA. It wasn't necessarily net income positive. So, but I'd have to go back and look. All right, enough about those. Let me catch up in the chat. I'm having fun with these LNGs. Rolls Royce is very exciting for SMRs potentially. If we're in a bull market, valuation on companies doesn't matter. If we're in a bear market, everyone talks about valuation. I would disagree. It depends on what company. I think this was a very Palantir centric statement. I don't have opinions on NVIDIA. Russell announcement is about 55 minutes. I thought it was. Oh, it's 6 p.m. Eastern. Okay. I thought somebody told me it was 5 p.m. Do you have a Patreon where you share more write-ups on VG or is this YouTube subscriptions? I have plenty of stuff in the Patreon. I don't really can. I found that a lot of people were using the Patreon not for, how do I say this? My thought process with starting the Patreon was donations originally. And then I started writing a little bit more and diving in depth for, I don't want to say the advanced investor. That wasn't my intent. My intent was really for people that kind of knew. And unfortunately, what you had was a lot of people. This is not going to be politically correct. You had a lot of people that want a lot of hand holding. And I'm that was not the intent of the service. The intent was to write high level due diligence on great companies, not to spoon feed it to you, right? So I expect people that want to be part of the Patreon. What I was doing was they would at least have some sort of um, wish to kind of do their own due diligence and maybe wanted to do a little bit deeper of a dive on some companies. But instead, you had people that would ask questions but not read the write ups. They just wanted to be told, like, just because they gave you $5 this month, they could message me directly and say, give me your thesis on X, Y, and Z. And it's like, did you not read the last 3 reports that I wrote over the past 2 weeks? It goes to your inbox every time I finish it. No, I haven't had the chance to do that. Okay, well, please read those and come back to me. And it became a lot of that. And I decided to kind of just go back to it being more of a donation. And I do have a chat I keep up with, but it's just I love my job. I'm working my job. I'm, spending a lot of time on my job. And the last thing I wanted to do was kind of like answer when Lambo questions. And what I mean by that is it's like people that are just like, what's stock price going to be after next earnings report? And it's like, that's not why I'm investing in this company. Like, if you joined my Patreon, I hope you would recognize that I don't invest in these companies for next quarter results. A lot of the times I invest in that damn picture in the background. I need to figure it out. It always becomes crooked. But anyway, so anyway, I'll get off my soapbox there. But my hope is that the people that were to join the Patreon would actually read the articles instead of just like trying to use it as an avenue to get my phone number and message me directly, to which some people did. And I don't mind people asking, specifically if it's a question that has proprietary information and you want to keep it private. I get that. But a lot of times it's like, hey, Matt, good morning. When share price go higher? Like, and I'm being facetious when I say that, but there was a lot of that where it's just like, do you think that this launch is going to make Rocket Lab's stock price go to $45? And it's like, it's an Electron launch. There's been 63 of them. No, like, I don't know. Like, so I didn't want to be bombarded with questions that didn't have a lot of merit to them. Um, and I think unfortunately, it was a lot of people that were very new to investing, and um, like like to listen to me because I'm bullish on a company, but unfortunately, um, have their own perspectives, invest in the company for their own perspectives, and then think that their perspectives are my reality. So it doesn't matter if you think the stock is going to go up $20, $30 in the next quarter. That's not what I'm saying, right? And I think that that's where I think a lot of people um, and I kind of differed, and I stopped having a lot of enthusiasm on writing stuff on Patreon. I'd have a lot of people ask questions or like, "Can you write up this?" And then I would do it, and then unfortunately, they would be like, "Hey, you never wrote up anything on this." I'm like, "Have you been paying attention?" Because I did write up on that, and I wrote up on about a bunch of times. Um, so um, I recommend a lot of people just invest in the S&P 500 for a reason, and a lot of it as well is like SMCI is a really good example of this for what happened in the Patreon. I was very adamant that SMCI in the first quarter earnings call, sorry, the full year 2024 earnings call, first quarter earnings call would actually show up pretty well. I forget which one it was, not this most recent one, but the one that happened about 3 months ago, 2 months ago. Um, and I noted that it was a swing trade, right? And it was something that I started buying in the low 20s, sorry, not low 20s, high 20s, low 30s, and accumulated a decent position, had some long calls, not leaps or anything like that, although I might have had a few leaps, but it was mostly like mid 2025 sort of options. And I denoted to people, this is very rare for me, but this is a swing trade, and I will be exiting this. This is not something I plan to hold long term, but that might change. And I had people reaching out to me literally last week, like, "Are you still holding on to SMCI?" I'm like, I very made it very public about my swing trade in and out um, of it. So I took the opportunity to literally buy the rumor and sell the news, and made, I'm not talking life changing money, but enough where it was a couple months' salaries worth. But that's the thing that I fear that a lot of people, when they follow these Patreons, they just assume that somebody's going to just like be buying and selling and doing the actual purchasing and selling of these things for them. And unfortunately, you have to meet up and be paying attention to what these people are saying. Not only do you have to be right on the buy with some of these things, you have to be right on the sell. Um, and so, unfortunately, with that, you see people get burned quite a bit. And so, anyway, I've seen what other people have said without saying names. I've seen what other people say when it's like you're handling money for people. It's just a very frustrating game. And as much as I would love to do it, and I love doing it for myself, I don't know if I could do it for other people. I don't know if I have the patience for that. And you'll have people all the time being like, "Oh, I promise you, I won't ask questions." That's a lie. Um, so anyway, any thoughts on EOG? EOG is great. Great company. I just don't know about their stock personally. So they do a phenomenal job with running their business. I just don't know anything about the metrics of the company. If I remember correctly, last time I checked, it was still pretty expensive. It hasn't come down like the rest of the companies in the stock market. So I think that there's likely to be better companies that are a better buy out there. And there's a few. I don't have any oil companies other than share-based compensation. As you guys know, I'm a petroleum engineer by education, and I work in oil and gas, so I do get some share-based compensation. So full disclosure there. Anything in energy right now is all LNG focused. Um, so except for my share-based compensation. So I'm waiting for the second quarter, and then I might make a judgment into buying more or buying into some oil companies. But EOG would not be one of them unless the price came down. Big Dick Ken, hope things are going well, my guy. Um, yeah, that's the problem. Everyone wants to catch the next mooner. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Only a week late. Um, so far, 34 has been okay. They are Pokemon tins. Yes, they are. Alex Carp in the building, everybody. I do think ASTS will grow much faster, but prefer our Rocket Lab long term. Don't have much of either. Interesting. What's the best way to learn options? Open a paper account, man. And you really have to think like this. It's an undertaking to learn options, right? So if you don't have an idea as to how the stock market itself works, and nobody really does per se, but if you don't have confidence in what you're doing, just in the regular buying and trading and selling of equities, um, you're talking about derivatives then of equities, right? So if you think the stocks move fast, options move faster, and so think about the regular stock market buying selling as high school or maybe even college, and then you could think about options kind of being it's a bad analogy, but options kind of being more like professional sports. You really kind of have to know what you're doing. But it also is very, you just this is the other thing as well is like, you know, you really have to have confidence in what your plan is and what you're doing and why, and what option is the right tool, right? And I talk about this a lot on the channel. Is like when you're trying to build your financial house, right? If you're putting in windows, you don't need a jackhammer. Um, if you're framing, you don't need roofing. Uh, if you're trying to do electric work, you need wire cutters. You don't need a hammer. And so options, there's a lot of different tools, but you really have to understand what you're going to be utilizing each tool for. So buying an option, much different than selling an option, is a different tool. Why would you use buying versus selling in a particular situation? That's for you to understand and find out. But in order for you to make the right decision, you have to understand where you are in your financial foundation of building your house. And I think, unfortunately, and I'm saying this because it comes from experience. I've literally lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, not hundreds of thousands, but over $100,000 being dumb selling options that I shouldn't have been selling. So I'm more than happy to tell people, don't be stupid. Uh, and the thing that's beautiful about options is you can. This could be very crude language, but hopefully you guys understand. You can feel like maybe I won't use the crude language. Maybe this is a better analogy. When you start selling options and you start to get it a little bit, and things are going well for you, you'll feel like you're 18 feet tall. You'll feel like you're God's gift. You'll feel like nothing can stop you. You'll feel like I'll be able to retire tomorrow. And then all you need is one pullback, one wrong misstep, and you could literally wipe out your entire account and then owe hundreds of thousands of dollars on top of it. So it really, just caution there, about that. I would say just take it slow. Um, Try to understand how you want to look at it. Is it going to be something that's supplemental to your investment position or the only way that you're going to make money? Some people look at it as this is the only way I'm going to make money. and so they'll try to wheel. They'll never own stock positions. If they do, it's for the short amount of time that they can sell a covered call against it. Hopefully, those shares get called away, and they never want to own any stock. Then you have myself. I buy these stocks because I think that that will be the largest gains in my portfolio. And so I think that buying Palantir, buying Rocket Lab, etc., those are the things. So I won't sell Rocket Lab calls unless I'm very certain that there's going to be a nothing burger. And, um, I have a decent amount of control of what the share price will do. So um, the last thing I want to do is be in a place where Rocket Lab moons, and we could see this today, where Rocket Lab moons to say $28, and my shares get called away. I don't want that to happen. So it might happen actually today. Before I sold the calls, I didn't realize the Russell 1000 announcement was coming out today, but I saw that Rocket Lab was trading for $25, and the $27 calls expiring today were trading for 2 cents. So I was like, well, I got a couple thousand shares at this point. I'll just say that, selling each one for 2 cents ends up being a pretty penny. So we will see, if it jumps after potentially being included. But you have to think, like, a lot of people will tell you, sell very close to the money. You can make a lot of income that way. But I look at my individual stock positions as golden gooses, and I'm looking to make just a couple percentage points a year. My thought process is, you got a couple $1,000,000 under your belt, you make a couple percentage points from selling covered calls over the course of a year. It's going to be tens of thousands of dollars, right? That you can then reinvest back into your portfolio, use for income, etc. I think a lot of people try to swing for the fences. They say, I need to get 1% a week, or 2% a month, or whatever. They make up these arbitrary deadlines, and that's when they get themselves into trouble, selling things way too close to the money, not having the discipline to be able to recognize that they're selling things riskier than they should to be able to try to meet some sort of arbitrary target. So just be cautious with that. Do you think Black Sky is a good investment? They partnered with Rocket Lab, and Teal holds over 2 million shares. When you say partnered, I know that they're utilizing Rocket Lab to launch their vehicles. I don't know if it's a partnership per se, but depending on how they phrase it, I guess. But yes, Rocket Lab is sending their vehicles. They've sent a lot of vehicles through Rocket Lab. Didn't know Teal held 2 million shares of Black Sky. I don't know. I think Black Sky is doing okay, but it goes back to, do I think it's going to be better than Rocket Lab? And I could see a world where Rocket Lab ends up buying out Black Sky outright, in a couple of years' time. Is that guaranteed to happen? No, but I could see a world where that could happen, So it just doesn't make sense to me to dilute my investment in Rocket Lab to be able to buy Black Sky or anything of the like, personally. These are the questions I'm not going to be answering. What price next tomorrow? What stock price for a company that you like tomorrow? Yes, price action tells beautiful stories. This is about investing across multiple. Yeah, Stan Druckenmiller and Tesla, same difference, 100%. Yeah, I'm not 100% certain who all is supposed to launch ASTS. I know that they were using New Glenn, I thought. And I thought they also had Falcon 9s, no? I don't know. I'm no expert. Yes, Neutron could easily send the ASTS satellites into space. Yes, it could. Good job. Thank you for the membership, my guy. Much appreciated. I appreciate the 5 gifted as well. I didn't see that. Much appreciated, my friend. Neutron can launch ASA, but it's smaller, so fewer than. Yes. So New Glenn can launch. What can New Glenn launch? It's pretty up there. Is it like 50,000? 45,000. Okay, so it's about twice a Falcon 9 and about 3x a Neutron rocket. They say that it could theoretically lift 61 to 75,000 to low Earth orbit. That's pretty wild. But yes, Rocket Lab Neutron could. As far as I'm aware, how big, how much does the Bluebird 2 weigh from ASTS? Okay. Yeah, so I think they're trying to launch 5 at a time. So that would definitely mean that it's probably best to use the New Glenn because they're approximately 4,200 pounds each, at least from what this is saying. So that would put it on New Glenn territory. They could launch one or sorry, they could launch potentially up to 3 on a Neutron, and it would be cheaper too. So I guess it really just depends the frequency in which they need to launch. How much it costs for a New Glenn launch, that I don't know. It's not cheap for New Glenn. How much is a New Glenn launch cost? I thought it was like north of 100. So apparently it's supposed to be 66 million. So if that's the case, that's pretty awesome. It's really awesome. That's cheaper than I was expecting. Good for them. Apparently, Reddit, some people are speculating it costs up to 100 million. I thought it was closer to 100 million, to be honest. Let's see. Sorry, I'm 25 minutes behind. Big Dick Kev. I have short puts. Short puts on video are different than long puts. When people talk about puts, they normally mean long puts. That's a funny quote. No comment. Yeah, exactly. It's funny. Nah, man, nobody's knocking on this door. Single for life. Keep trying to get people to set me up, and they're like, "Oh no, no, I don't have a Lambo." One day. BD Curtis, what's going on, my guy? Hope things are going well, brother. No, that's just you, June. That's just you. Yeah, when girls realize that it's actually in like real life. This is a bad start. I'm gonna get myself in trouble. In real life, actually, like when if I just don't like a chick, I just like will stop talking to her. And I'll like the whole time, like I try to help people out with like, hey, you should get invested, and and if they don't, eventually they don't listen. And I'm like, all right, we're on two different wavelengths with this. Like, they don't show any interest. Like, I get it. I don't want them to be like, let's talk about Palantir at dinner. Like, I don't want them to be like that. But what I am trying to do is just like, if they just don't take their financial house seriously, how am I supposed to let them into my financial house and be serious? So it's kind of like, all right, well, So after a while, I think they catch the hint that like that's a sticking point for me, and so I'll like really start to pull away. The next thing you know, they're like, "LOL, what was that ticker that you told me to buy?" So it's actually pretty funny. But normally, yeah, normally I don't have that problem because I don't talk to any women. Um, like so the price tomorrow is going to be what? And should I buy it? Yes, it was definitely SMCI was definitely a swing trade. Let's just see. What do you think of the U.S. economy? It does not look good because of everything debt, bonds, no trust anymore. Um, I would disagree with the trust piece. I think that's a little bit overblown in terms of that. I think that there's a lot more trust in this particular administration than I think a lot of people give credit for. And maybe that's just my MAGA Matt view. I know a lot of people, like to make fun of the fact that I'm very pro Trump, but at the end of the day, I think that he's a lot more elbows on the table than Joe Biden ever was, and I wasn't a big fan of people that lean back in the chair. I'm all for leaning back in the chair every once in a while and having a good time, taking a breather, smoking a cigar, having a good time. But it seemed like very little arms on the table, elbows on the table sort of work that was kind of going on in the previous administration. And I think, unfortunately, with that, we kind of became a teat that everyone could suck on across the world. And unfortunately, we just kind of were just letting ourselves bleed dry. I think a lot of people are having allergic reactions to the current administration's acknowledgement of the fact that we have a deficit that's out of control. Our spending is out of control. We have people continue to take advantage of us from a trade perspective, which I agree with wholly. So, what I will say is the manner in which it maybe has been carried out is a little rude, crude, and abrupt. But at the end of the day, I think that sometimes you need to use those sorts of tactics to be able to say, "Look, we're not effing around. We have to pay attention to this and get to a mutual agreement." Um, and so there's that piece. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, this sucks. Why would we do this?" It's like, well, have you seen the current debt today? And do you acknowledge that if we don't do something today to try to offset that or move things in the opposite direction, we won't have an American economy to complain about because there won't be one. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, I can't believe this tariff stuff. Like, this is such bullshit. Look, I hear you, but I think if you need to think about things that are out of the box to be able to create revenue into the government that and that includes the Trump card, things like that are out of the box that at least gets us in the right direction. I agree with what Doge is doing. Do I think that they've done enough? I think that they need to continue. Obviously it's only been a couple months. I think they've made some good strides. But my hope is that you end up having half a trillion to $1 trillion of inefficiencies being removed from the government over the course of the next 4 to 5 years, and get ourselves back to a influx of capital from taxes, etc., that actually provide some sort of surplus. I mean, that's what I want to see instead of like I think about how much I pay in taxes, guys. As a 34-year-old single male, and I just feel like I don't get that value out of the U.S. government. Um, I don't want to state how much I pay in taxes every year. It's a lot, and I just when I go to work every day, I'm fortunate to have highways and things like that. But it's just like I know for a fact that I'm probably contributing to multiple families, which is fine if those families need it. But I know there's a lot of people out there, unfortunately, that are just taking advantage of the money that I'm paying into the government. People that are perfectly capable that just want to live on live on the dole and not necessarily go to work because they just don't want to. And to me, that just sucks. So I would like to see a place where there's efficiencies. I would love to see drug tests and in what's the word I'm looking for? Disability. Like if there's any suspect, like maybe the first time, do a drug test, but before you're able to start getting, disability and stuff like that. Um, there's people that abuse the system, and unfortunately, it's those people that make it hard. It's like, do I think that everybody that's on unemployment and that have like long term disabilities, etc., are doing drugs? No, I don't. I've known some very prominent people in my life that mean a lot to me that at some point or another within their careers needed to go on short term or long term disability because of things that have happened to them. And it was a godsend that their employers had those benefits for them. But I've seen a lot of people that unfortunately do take advantage of those systems and milk those systems. And I'm tired of it, And I honestly think that alone, being able to clean up those things, would allow us to truly move the dial, a couple percentage points. But that's what we're talking about, guys. We're talking about a couple percentage points. So anyway, I don't want to get too political, but I hope that folks would agree with me when it comes to that. Um, I don't know what XEXE is. You keep asking, but I'm sorry, I don't know. People only say that they won't ask questions is when you are king money. As soon as they see money is down 40, they will start asking questions. I get it, man. And I'm not a person that's afraid to admit when they're wrong. I admit that all the time. And I try to tell people, like, case in point, why they should potentially or not invest in some of these things. Like ABCL, very risky. Next decade, potentially risky. Doesn't have any revenue coming in at the moment. And even people in BG, like I can understand where somebody might say, Matt, like this is overvalued. It was overvalued when you started investing in it, and I would agree. Like I was not surprised. The thought process was in the long term growth of the company that it would eventually be $100 billion company. That buying it at a $40 billion market cap, it would be a 2.5x, potentially more if they had share buybacks, etc. And it would take some time to get there. It was a very low. What's the word I'm looking for? From a company business plan perspective, low risk. The risk was the valuation of the company, which is why Chris and I weren't originally going to invest in the IPO when they were trying to value it at 100 billion plus. We just, it was insane. We said no, absolutely not. Because at that point we were like, "There's no meat on the bone." But at 40, we were like, "Okay," and we were fortunate to start being able to load up more and more in the $20 billion market cap range. So very fortunate that we had that opportunity. How do you resist FOMO? I just research the companies. I think about highly where I want them to be. Um, in term and I try to be realistic with myself. Um, I try to recognize why is the stock going down. It could very well be that the stock is making the wrong decisions, making the wrong moves, which is why I sold things like SoFi, for example. SoFi is a great company, and I feel bad because I bring it up a good bit because SoFi is one of those companies that I think will continue to do well. But I invested in it for a different thesis that I thought was going to be more prominent, and I haven't seen the technology piece come through like I was expecting. So I'm not going to hold on to a company that I no longer see eye to eye with. Um, Granted, that's a situation where I still made money, but it goes to just always, you can't just invest in a company once and forget about it. If that's something you want to do, invest in the S&P 500. So my question to you is, when you invest in some of these companies, are you continually following up into them and understanding? And it goes back to how many stocks you have. I remember being at one point over 25, probably 30 different stocks in my portfolio. And a lot of it was like that, just like invest as much as I can. And then I started to realize like I really need to keep on track as to like what these companies are doing and if they're moving in the right direction. And I'm not necessarily talking about the quarterly numbers per se. Um, the quarterly numbers help in making sure, but the quarterly numbers are a snapshot over a 10-year journey. They're not the snapshot, right? If that makes sense. It's like it's going to provide you a lens as to direction and how things are progressing, not like you can't look on a quarterly basis without looking out, in my opinion, 5, 10 years down the road and say, okay, after 40 quarters, this is where it's, or 20 quarters, this is where we're going to be. Just by looking at this, you have to hear the context around how they're describing the business, what strategy they're implementing, what forward-looking things they're looking for a couple years out that are pertinent to them, the culture, and if any of those things deters away, then that's um, that's what would cause me to sell a stock or to potentially buy in, if I believe in that. Rocket Lab was one of those ones where it's just like these guys truly knew what they were talking about. I like the culture that they were building, the way that they described things. It made me feel like I could get behind that. Um, versus other companies, it was just like continued. How do I say this? They weren't doing things as complex as Rocket Lab, but they continued to have excuses as to why they weren't getting done. So um, it didn't make sense to hold on to a company like that. And since SoFi being an example of that as well, it's like great company will continue to do well, but where would I rather have my capital, right? Especially like you don't need to invest in every company. That's something that I used to think that I had to do is if I like the company, I have to invest in it. It's like, no, put your money into a company where you think you'll have good returns for what you're looking for. That doesn't mean the company has to make a bunch of money in 2026 or even 2025. It just has to mean you feel like the path that they're going towards, they will have some sort of movement in some sort of specified time for your hope or knowledge. If they don't and they hit that milestone and it's a complete flop, or they shift or they go a different direction, um, or they don't meet your expectations with respect to capability, then it's in your right to sell the stock. Trying to think if there's other companies that have had like that in the portfolio. Yeah, I can't think of any. But you really addicted. And I don't invest, I used to be a little bit easier to get myself to invest into companies. Now it requires a little bit more thought because I'm gonna if I'm gonna put money into something, I need to put about six figures into it now. Um, so this doesn't make sense. I mean, I might throw a starter position of like 5, 10 grand or something like that. But if I'm entering something now, the hope would be that I scale it to be about $100,000. Yeah, I think hopefully what I was just talking about answers that. This is really up to you, man. I don't know what your goals and objectives are. I'm a big fan of EG. I think 5 years is too soon. I would look 10 years out personally, 2035. Um, yeah. And also, you know, is the amount of return that you're thinking enough, right? I also try to be transparent with what I think, what I personally think based off my due diligence and my thought process, what the returns will be for a particular company. And people will still somehow think that it'll magically be more than that. Um, and it could well be. Like I'm not saying, like I'll say things like, on a conservative metric, I believe this is where Rocket Lab will be, but um, people will hear me say 4 to 5x, and then they'll be like, "Hey, it hasn't 4 or 5x. It's been 3 weeks. What gives?" And it's like, all right, not so sure what you're expecting there, but looks like we missed Curtis. He's signing off. Uh, I think that this is a question you need to answer to yourself. Like options is going to require time, and how much time do you actually want to put in? You know, it really just depends. Like if you just want to invest money, then not think about it, just be mindless, and just keep about your life, and just I would say invest in the SP 500 and don't look back, don't think about it, just do that. For some reason, people always think they need to be investing in individual securities, that they're going to have way more time than they actually do. Um, so, what do I think about selling in the money puts if the stock does not go up? Do you just roll it? It really depends on what company, and why you're doing it. Are you actually bullish on the company? Or are you just looking to collect premiums? Right. I think the latter can be very scary, um, and you might be just doing it for a fat income check. And if that's the case, then might put yourself into some danger. But I do this on certain companies to get some money forward, maybe buy some leaps or something like that with the proceeds. But it really just depends. I would just be very cautious with this strategy because I think some people can get very um, Lazy. What's the word I'm looking for? I think some people get very greedy. I think, and really think that, oh, it's definitely going to go up, and it might not. I don't know if you're asking if I'm wanting an Optimus spot, or if you're asking Tess or somebody else. When is Google coming back? It already has come back a little bit. Isn't it at, yeah, it's at 168. It wasn't like the 145, 150 range. Huh. Teo De Niro. What's going on, John? Hope you're doing well, brother. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up. It's really up to you, man. I think depending on what it is, it might be cheaper uh, to be a YouTube member. So just do whatever's cheapest for you. Like I said, I'm not contributing as much to the writing and stuff on Patreon as I used to, and everything that's on Patreon, I try to copy and paste over into YouTube as well. Um, what major to you apply to? That's something I can't answer, but uh, I think anything with STEM, in my opinion, computers are great. Great. Being able to manage AI will be something that's huge in the future. Um, university. You have to think as well as like, um, just because you go to university doesn't mean you have to use that degree either. Um, I know plenty of great plumbers that make a lot of money. I know plenty of great electricians that make great money. I know people that have used their money from their engineering careers to start building homes. And you don't need an education to build homes. You need training to build homes. So, and become a contractor, right? So it really just depends upon what makes you happy. But um, yeah, I don't think that you'd go wrong with some sort of mechanical engineering degree. The ability to kind of understand how systems work and statics, dynamics, etc. You can go many different directions with mechanical engineering. Um, the thing that's most important about university is understanding more who you are and discovering what you're not, what you're interested in, what you're not interested in, meeting new people, discovering what things you like about people, what you don't. Um, you're hopefully with university, you're going to be off into some sort of dorm room and by yourself to some extent. It might be the first time that you're kind of left to your own devices. And so it's going to say a lot about you, how you conduct yourself, and um, put put start to put some sort of independence in your blood, if that makes sense. But I didn't. I originally went to college for general science. I was actually going to be try to be some sort of like physical trainer, being like a like working for a sports team. So my thought process was if somebody had like a knee injury or arm injury, etc., I'd be able to be on site helping them, and I would be able to travel around with them, and that was kind of my initial thoughts. And then I stumbled upon petroleum engineering my freshman sophomore year at Penn State, and the rest is kind of history. I never thought of myself being smart enough to be an engineer. I still don't think I'm smart enough at all, but um, yeah, I like this. Figure out what you're interested in. I didn't have to declare my major until my junior year, so it was like halfway through my sophomore year. I actually had to physically apply to what college. So I went to the university, Penn State University, but I didn't actually get into the college of my choice until my sophomore year. So, and I did a complete 180. I was originally going to do, like I said, like a general science that would allow me to go on and get my doctorate in physical therapy. And um, I took a swing out of nowhere. I was like, it seems like a dope career. And took a swing at petroleum engineering, and luckily I got accepted into the college. My life's been changed ever since. Yeah, Julie's been avoiding us, man. I'm not in Nvidia. I've a short put position, um, so it's technically bullish. I would agree with this. A lot of people think you need to be diversified. That can be a deterrent to profitability. Share quantity isn't important, right? I mean, I would hope that you get 100 shares, so you have the optionality to, um, write covered calls and stuff. Not seen any movements on Rocket Lab or anything, guys. So maybe they did the Russell 1000 announcement. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. Russell 1000 index fund. Let's do tools. Past 24 hours. Let's see. Companies. Was it just now? Not seeing it, guys. All right. Smaller or large position. I mean, it really depends on the stock price, man. Really does. You really have to think about a dollar amount, what you think is enough for you. And the thing that I like to tell people is if you want think about where you want positions to be in your portfolio. Like For example, Rocket Lab is one of those things where it's like I wanted it to be a substantial position of you know where it is today. And that's kind of a surprise. I didn't think we would get here for a little bit longer, and here we are now. Um, but I basically was just like, all right, well, if I wanted it to, let's just say, be $100,000 position, and I think it's going to 5x, I would want to put in at least $20,000. And is that $20,000 something I could digest, right? If I lost that $20,000 because it's an extremely risky stock or what have you, would I be able to live with myself, right? Could I afford that loss? And if the answer is yes, then put fucking 20 grand in it, you know? So that's kind of my thinking around some of that. It's more along the lines of what's your end goal? I think so many people try to think like they try to start at the beginning and then try to like feel their way through it. I used to do the same thing, so don't it's no hit on anybody. But to me, it's more along the lines of I want this to be a prime example. Amazon and Google. I'm like I want those to be at least $300,000 positions eventually someday in my portfolio. So I want to make sure I have close to 100 grand invested in those, um, because I think they'll 3x from here between now and kind of before I stop, I guess, investing, if that makes sense. And same thing, Rocket Lab, Palantir. I'm like, I wanted these to be half a million, $1 million positions. So I put in enough where I thought eventually, share buybacks included, etc., they'd be worth half a million to $1 million. I do think it'll be a sell the news event as well. I do think that they're going to be. So I think we're going to get back to where we are today. I don't think so. I think we'll still see some rise, but I do think that you'll see some sort of buy the rumor, sell the news event with Rocket Lab on this particularly. What price do we get to? Do we get to $40, $50? I don't know. I'm going to keep investing throughout the entirety of the time, but I wouldn't be surprised if we stayed below a $30 price target as well. I think we'll get it north of 40 or 240 with a neutron launch, but I could easily see the price retracing. But I'm no fortune teller, so yes. Price targets don't mean anything. That's another thing. Is it's like I can give you a price target, but you know what? For example, I could be like my price target on Rocket Lab is my price target on Rocket Lab is about 100 to $200. So a lot of you might be like, "Oh shit, I need more Rocket Lab. That's a 4 or 5x from now, potentially 8x. That's a lot of money." I didn't give you a time horizon, so you might be thinking, "Oh, this guy thinks it's going to 4 or 5x. I need to invest today." But I'm thinking it's going to be a 4 or 5x. Um, it'll be in like 10 years time or so. Thanks, Ricardo. You've always been a good follower of the channel. I appreciate you. Yes, exactly. That is something that I try to convene to people. It could always go to zero. It always could. Yeah, Tess is a fortune teller, as some may say. But are the fortune cookies made out of biscuits? No. Okay. Sorry, I had to do it. Let's see. I'm not even close to catching up. I'm like 5 minutes. Sorry, 5:16. BD Doug. I don't know what this was in reference to, but I appreciate you. We got Hot Doug saying the same. I don't know what I said to warrant that, but BD Kev. That's why they're paying the big bucks, man. He knows what he's doing. Yeah, I like this. This is also true. This is also true. I do need bros, man. I'm starting to fall asleep. I'm pretty tired. I had to get up early yesterday to talk to a country on the Eastern Hemisphere, far Eastern Hemisphere. And then today wasn't that early, but I went to sleep later than I wanted. But that's that. Apologies. I feel like I've been complaining most of this. That is a good photo. Let me see. Can I find that photo really quick? Of me and Tess. You just sent it to me? Okay. Maybe my notifications will start working again. Nope, notifications are still behind, but I got your DM. You go down in the DM. Man, my hair was crazy all over the place. Let me see. Am I sharing anything proprietary on this Russell 2000 Palantir workbook? GEV? No. There's me and the boss lady. She stole my hat. I think I'm wearing that same shirt right now. I am. My hair is all over the place. Surprised she got close enough. No, no ladies in the Far East. Just people that I'm working with. Thank you for sending that to me. I have it somewhere, I think. If not, I need to save those photos. They're good photos. Good people. Good to see Miss Tess. Yeah, me and Stanley Druckenmiller. The High Flood. A little crazy, but awesome because that night was just cool. It was a good night. It was good seeing you as well. And it was Miss Michelle's birthday. Let me think. Anyway, hope this finds you guys well. Appreciate hopefully some words of wisdom. Don't just full port into stupid shit. Um, you know, do your due diligence, and if you can't, invest a little bit. And really try to think it through. And this is one thing that I hope people take more seriously is, it's okay to invest just in the S&P 500. And I think I've met many people that I'm actually very proud where they're like, just the indexes, man. Like, I don't care. I don't care enough to try to pick. And I'm very happy when I meet those people. I had a guy that I worked with, it's close to 7-8 years ago. He moved away now, but really sad. He was an engineer, early 40s. I kind of viewed him as like a life coach, just you have those people in your life that like you kind of view as kind of like a mentor, slash like father-esque sort of figure that help you along with life as you transition to new phases. And I was 7 years ago. I mean, I was in my mid 20s, and I was trying to just, you know, build a portfolio and build a life here in Houston. And so I looked up to him. He was 15 years down the road, had some kids, had a beautiful wife, beautiful house, etc. And um, I was like, dude, like, what do you do? You're a smart guy. Like, I'm sure you can make some really good plans in the market and do really well. And he was just like, index funds, man. And I was like, really? I was like, why? He was like, it's just, I'm just not interested. He's like, the smartest thing I can do. He's like, what am I going to do? Put money into things that I barely know anything about? And like, that's just the wisest way that you can like think about it. It's like, really a fair point, right? You just willingly to just going to throw hundreds of thousands of dollars into money into stocks that you literally don't know could be dog shit, or not make any money. And I was um, very pleased that he was like, nope, just the S&P 500. And to be very honest, I probably would have, I when I was younger, this is why I try to preach this as well. I probably missed out on hundreds of thousands of dollars of appreciation because I thought I knew more than I did, when I first started investing 10, 12 years ago. And, but you're young, and I try to help people along this, and I see them make the same mistakes that I did. You try to help them along, you try to lead them to water, but they have to make those mistakes sometimes. And hopefully, you guys hear it and it resonates with you. And maybe you make those mistakes, but those mistakes are small, and to pivot faster, even if it changes your investment trajectory by a couple of years, and you start moving in a different direction several years earlier. That could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in the long run. Sorry, I'm just like gonna clean my desk. There's like dust all over it. And that could mean years of potential moves in the right direction. So, like, I'm literally here talking about stocks. Like, I do live streams every Saturday about Rocket Lab, a company that I really love. Um, I lived, breathed, and dreamt about Palantir for years before the numbers showed up. Yeah, as Doug eloquently puts it, like, I don't really have other friends other than people that I've met through the internet because of investing. So like, I'm kind of a loner uh, in that respect. So yeah, I mean, like just keep that in mind, And if this is like the one in like every 6 month chance that you stumble across this channel and you're like, Matt, what stock should I buy? It's like you should probably just invest in the S&P 500. That's okay. But I think even more so, you just always have to go back to the 5 things I always talk about, which is time horizon, objective, risk tolerance, how much time you want to put into things. Very important in terms of do you want to be physically active with it? Do you want to be kind of like passive with it? And then also how much you're going to add in terms of capital, because that's also very important. Like, let's just say you only have $1,000 and you live paycheck to paycheck, and unfortunately you are living on disability, and that disability check that you get only pays for your bills. And in order to get you anywhere, any sort of shape, way, or form for you to have a better life, you need that $1,000 to turn into X amount of dollars. Well, if that's the only 100,000, or if that's the only $1,000 you have, and you need to turn it to 100,000, then you need to find a wild idea. Like investing in AT&T won't be the choice for you, right? But let's just say you come into some sort of inheritance and you've acquired 8 figures through inheritance, and your goal is to just, spend $300,000 of that a year. Then, you could easily do that by investing in the S&P 500 and taking out your 3% a year. If you have $10 million, put it in the S&P, and some years you're going to be able to pull out $300,000, and actually every year I'm sure you'll be able to pull out $300,000 to live off of, no problem. I saw something. Somebody said somewhere. I wanted to answer. Why is this not going up? You and Chris mentioned mineral lands, companies that buy and have a royalty. I went with a rabbit hole, and good data came out of it. Thanks a lot. Yes, if you are very specific on Grok, you can find some very good companies that I think are underperforming right now. Um, Very low cost of business. But the thing with these companies that's beautiful, and I won't name specific companies, but the thing that's beautiful with these companies is they are majority of the time high margin businesses because they're operating off of royalties and mineral rights. And what that means is, and this isn't everybody, some of them have non-operating working interests, which still means they have to pay for expenses and stuff like that. But if you're talking about overriding royalties, the amount of money that those overriding royalties can generate is very high, and also large gross margins because you're not paying for operating expenditures. So you're getting gross volumes off of, let's say an oil lease makes 100 barrels and you have a 2% override interest before any um, operating expenditures or anything get attached to that. You literally get the cash of that 2 barrels of oil if you have a 2% overriding royalty interest before anything else comes out. And the only thing you have to pay in terms of overhead as your company is strictly the amount of people you have employed in your company. So there's no operating of heavy machinery. It's literally a financial transaction in that respect. So the margins of those businesses are very high versus the oil and gas business, might be a little bit more tricky because you have to drill new wells and everything like that, right? So it's a reason why they're called royalties. So the royalty business model is very interesting. There's a few companies in there that I'm looking at potentially to invest in if given good oil prices and drops in opportunity. $20. I appreciate the super chat, Diego. Much appreciated, my friend. Why aren't you worried about Europe buying natural gas from Russia? Let them. Let them. I just feel like we saw what happened when, and it very well be that they will potentially buy more, right? But what I doubt you'll be able to see or will see is, unless some drastic treaty is built by the negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, I doubt that people will want to put themselves through what happened in 2022. And Tess and several other people that maybe live across the pond will tell you potentially how awful it was with that initial supply shock of natural gas being cut off. And so if there's any risk of any further conflicts with Russia, the Nord Stream pipelines just not delivering, etc., then they need to have at least some sort of sourced gas from other places. That could be from Qatar, that could be from West Africa LNG, that could be from Australia, that could be from the United States, etc. But I doubt that they want to put themselves in that position again, where the majority of their gas consumption came from Russia for that potential reason. They need to diversify. Otherwise, they potentially will end up in a bad position. It was very difficult. People's energy bills went up thousands of dollars in a single month. People were talking about bankruptcy, having to close their shops for the entirety of the winter because they couldn't afford the cost of energy. And so let's look what happened. Maybe you remember this, maybe you don't. But TTF, natural gas prices. It's very easy for us in America because we just saw things go up to $8 an MCF. It wasn't that big of a deal. That's June 2023. Let's go back more. Maybe this will help. So I'm not saying that there won't be potential to buy back Russian gas, right? I'm not saying that. Um, what I am saying though is this massive peak that you saw starting in February. So this is the initial crisis kind of broke out in Ukraine. You saw prices spike up pretty substantially, and then throughout the entirety of the summer, as things started to get prepared for 2022, um, this went massive, and this was just due to the fact that there's so much spot prices being bought um, from the United States to help offset this. Had the United States not been there, I don't know what the EU would have done. Um, but this is what happens when you have reliance on one source. So if you don't have a source that you can trust, this is what potentially you might be laid with. So yes, they could go back to Russia. This is Dutch TTF, by the way, the title transfer facility in Holland. The You're risking that if any other war breaks out, Ukraine, Russia, etc., and they turn off that cheap gas, you're stuck in this situation again. So, um, and to be fair, look at the gas prices comparatively, right? So look what happened in 2021, 2022. Let's go back 10 years. Like, things were cheap, 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 cheap from Russia, no problem. 2021, things started getting a little heated, and boom, like now you're down, you're actually pretty cheap in terms of gas prices. Like, this is dollars per megawatt hour, by the way. Or sorry, euros per megawatt hour. So you have to do conversion to be able to get this to dollars. So this isn't $350 per MCF or anything like that. So the way that we measure things in Henry Hub versus how they measure things in Dutch TTF, it's not like for like. So just be cautious of that. This is probably around $14-15 per MCF, 36 to $40 per megawatt hour. Sorry, euros per megawatt hour. So um, this was when it was like 18 bucks or so back in like the a few months back, late December. It was great. Late December was good. Um, but anyway, hope that makes sense, right? It's not as simple as just like, oh, well, they're just going to go back to buying Russian gas. Well, this was the result of them just buying Russian gas. And so I think they don't ever want to be in that position again. Yeah, there you go. Whoops. Let's see. Is there anything else? Yes, I think that's going to be probably built into it as well. Thoughts on Palantir? Love it, man. Is it overvalued right now? I think absolutely, but it's going to be $1 trillion company one day. So it's hard to say what's going to happen between now and then. I mean, it's valued at close to $300 billion. We got Hot Tevis in the building, folks. The myth, the legend. Some call him Hot Tevis. No? Okay. All right, all. Well, 2 hours. Appreciate you listening to me whine and complain. But hopefully, you got some sort of enjoyment out of it. Hopefully, you learned a little bit about Venture Global, a little bit about Rocket Lab, a little bit about the next decade, learn a little bit about my philosophies on life. At the end of the day, hopefully, you guys can just make a little bit of money. As always, though, my perspective on how I invest my money. I'm 34, doing rather well in my portfolio. Stocks, real estate, etc. I might be in a very different position than you. So take it through, this is my lens that I'm projecting out into the world. Be sure to look at things through your lens, whether or not that fits, right? A very wise woman once told me, she said, Matt, take and listen to everybody's perspectives, but interpret it, digest it, and realize your own vision, you know? And I think it's very wise, right? You'll be able to not only know more about where they're coming from, their perspectives on a particular topic. Maybe it'll help shape your own visions of your own topic, but don't just regurgitate someone else's vision unless by chance it's brilliant, genius, and exactly the way you want to think of things or you feel convicted to think of things. Um, just avoid being a sheep, right? Listen to many. I wish I could be a sheep. I am not a sheep, unfortunately. My life would be much easier if I was. But at the end of the day, I think you definitely need to uh, listen more than you potentially project. And I think that's why we got 2 ears. That's another thing that somebody told me a very long time ago. We have 2 ears, one mouth for a reason. And one last thing, and this is another thing. Like I heard Amit say this earlier as well. The goal is to make enough money where you don't have to sell these things at all, right? The goal is that you're potentially getting enough dividends from these things. Like say you're holding on to Rocket Lab and it grows to be, let's say in my case, a multi-million dollar position and it starts yielding a 1% dividend. Well, why would you need to sell it if it's doing everything that you want it to, right? When would have been the right time to sell Microsoft since the 80s, right? Yes, there were some low points. So, the Ballmer era, etc., that didn't show up very well representatively in the stock price. But now, when's a good time to sell Microsoft? It's still growing. It's still paying off a decent dividend. You might be like, decent, but you have to think how much it's grown over the past 10, 12, 15 years. So in terms of that, yes, the dividend is pretty decent when you take into that account. So that's the thing, is like, when do you sell these things? Well, if they're as great as companies as we think they are, hopefully you'll never have to sell them. The hope is that you could potentially find great companies that eventually develop into mature companies that will pay you a dividend. Google's a prime example. Google just started paying their dividends. And my hope is it goes up another 3-4 times from here and pays a 1% dividend. And even that 1% dividend will hopefully be a pretty good chunk of change into my pocket every month. And so every quarter, rather. So, there's lots of different ways to think about these things. If you organize it appropriately, the hope really, guys, really in the long term, is to be able to have a portfolio that's about 25 to 30 times your current expenses, right? So not your salary, but your expenses. If you're doing 25 to 30 times your salary or net or your income, that's overkill in my opinion. What you need to look at is, what are your expenses, right? So let's just say you have $50,000 a year in expenses, multiply that by 25, 30 times, right? And the hope would be is that off of a 3 to 4% draw on that portfolio. So $50,000 times or divided by, 0.03. It's like 1.7 million dollar portfolio. The hope is if you have a 1.7 million dollar portfolio, every year you're going to be able to pull out 50 grand. And luckily, if your dividends are paying for it and you're writing some covered calls, you might not even need to pull out 50 grand if you're writing some covered calls and having some success with that. But if you just need that 50 grand, keep in mind, you hopefully will have Social Security, other things that'll hopefully come in, maybe some real estate that'll help provide some income as well. I mean, that's where I want you guys to start thinking, right? Think long term. Start at the end. How much money do you need at the end? You need 100 grand? Okay. You need 100 grand. Let's just do some quick math. 100 grand, you're getting a 3% dividend yield, and you need 3.3 million, right? Easy math. But if you say you need 100 grand and you're able to get 1% of that through covered calls as well, then you only need a 2% dividend yield because you get 1% through covered calls. That now means, what did I screw up? You need half as much, right? Because you're going to be able to get 1% through your dividends and what have you. So just keep that sort of stuff in mind, right? Start with the end in mind. You want a portfolio position to be $500,000 and you think it's going to 10x, you got to put 50 grand in, you know? No more fly by night bullshit. Let's put some real effort into this. Let's think about it. By no means am I some sort of oracle, but hopefully this, gives you some ideas as to how I think about the market and some good rules of thumb that I use, right? I wanted Rocket Lab to be potentially $1 million position. So I'm not just going to put in 10 grand and be like, yep, my 10 grand's going to grow into $1 million. You can't just fly by night like that. You really got to put some rigor and effort and thought process into this. And you can't just be like, oh, I'm just going to invest in Verizon and hope my $1,000 turns into 50 grand. It's like, my guy, you know what I mean? You really gotta put some sort of thought process behind these things. So hopefully that helps you guys in that respect, and you guys start to think like, not just adding $1,000 once and hoping you grow it to $1 million, but let's just see how you can add $1,000 every month to the portfolio, man. Like if you can get to that, the way that you will grow your portfolio is just holy shit. Like things will really start to move for you in the right direction. So hopefully that helps. Try to start at the end and think your way backwards, right? How am I going to get to X, Y, and Z? If my portfolio is going to say double, triple over the course of my lifetime, I need to get to here by age X, or I want this position to grow to $500,000. I needed to get it to here because I think between now and X, it's going to triple, quadruple, quintuple, etc. If I wanted to live only off of my portfolio from dividends or slight pullouts of the portfolio, let's just say you have a whole S&P 500 position and it's worth, $2 million. Well, that $2 million, the S&P pays already a 1.2% dividend. So that's going to be 24 grand. Well, you'll need to potentially, of that $2 million, pull out, what is that? I'm not good with math, guys. What is that? 0.18. So I'll need to pull out 36 grand. So hopefully in the grand scheme of things, the market will go up 6, 7, 8% per annum. You're already getting 24 grand from dividends from the S&P 500. Yes, some years you'll be able to go down, but at the end of the day, you'll still get your 50 grand that you need, stuff like that. Like that's the hope that I hope that you guys really start to put. It's mathematics at the end of the day, and none of it's perfect mathematics, but you can't just fly by night, listen to some YouTuber who lives in his mom's basement. I'm not talking about Amit. I'm talking about, most people that don't contribute, right? Like Amit's doing a real business. Like he's doing a real good job with himself. You have other people that are literally trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? Grift you into their YouTube courses and, their vicinity just to be able to get out of their mom's basement. Like, anyway, I am advertising Tevis. I have a feeling that Tevis is about to go live. And if he doesn't, then he will be live later. What do they call it? Techie boys? Tech daddies? What is this? What do they call it? FinTech Friday? That's not fun. What happened to like Tech Boy Hottie Toddies? No? What's this bullshit? Yeah, why isn't it called Tech Daddies? Look at this. Imagine not wanting to go to Mexico with this guy. Imagine not wanting to go to Mexico with this guy. I need to get lunch with this guy. It's been a minute. We need to get him to Mexico too. And I need to drink a beer with this guy, smoke a cigar. I need to pick his brain about things. He's a smart guy. All of them are. They're great. I love listening to them. They all have great perspectives. See this? It says subscribed. Make sure you guys hit that like button over there. I'm going to do the same. First one. Shout out your boy Mateus Mula. But hopefully you guys really like what you're seeing over there. I'm going to message. I think I just got a message from somebody very prolific in my Twitter DMs, and I'm going to petition to switch it to tech daddies. Fintech daddies. This intro, like I gotta ask. Look at this. Fridays. Who cares about Friday? Daddies are all day, every day, all week. You know, fintech daddies. I love it. You guys rock. Appreciate you. We need to get this guy to Mexico too. So if you're listening to this, if you're listening to this, let me know when you can go to Mexico. This guy bailed on me. I wanted to go to Mexico this weekend. He bailed on me. I hope he breaks his glasses and he can't see. You guys rock. Appreciate you humoring me. Going off on a tangent for 5 minutes, talking about these three good-looking gentlemen. I hope you guys have an opportunity to listen in. Anybody that's into fintech, specifically like SoFi and any of these other companies, these guys are definitely the ones to kind of listen to. And I know they also do the discussion on Mondays as well about Robinhood. I don't know what they changed the name to that to, so apologies, I don't know that one. But you guys rock. Once again, I'll put this in the chat. Hope you guys enjoy in 3 hours or so. I appreciate you guys humoring me, and I will talk to you guys soon. Cheers. Have a good night.